Mike, I think someone years and years ago wrote a song that had a line in it, something about being at the right place, but at the wrong time.
Ooh, not
So,
sure I remember that one, Barry. That must have been, in your genre up there in Grassy Creek.
yeah, it was a big hit on the Grassy Creek billboards. Uh, Kind of reminds us of a text that at the time of this recording is in this week's Torah portion. And in Devarim or Deuteronomy 25, verse 17, 18 says, Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you were coming out of Mitzrayim or Egypt. Key verse here, how he met you on the way and attacked your back. All the feeble ones in your rear when you were tired and weary. And he did not fear Elohim. There's something to be said about finding where Yah is moving, how he's working, what his focus happens to be on, and getting involved with that. Otherwise, at times we find ourselves falling behind, lagging behind, otherwise focused, frustrated, maybe complaining a bit. I'll throw it to you when I give you this thought here. I was thinking this morning about those who used to quote something. I don't know. I guess they thought they were quoting scripture. There's just one thing I know for sure: the devil can't cross the bloodline. As if there was an imaginary bloodline of Messiah somehow that was a ring of protection. And as long as I'm inside that ring of protection of the bloodline, you can't touch me. How true is that?
Well, this is a verse that I go to every year. I talk about my Living Torah program. It just is one that every year I come to it and start asking some questions regarding it. Before I get there, let me do this. Let me go to this bloodline thing. You brought up what you just brought up. I don't know why I remember this yesterday. I guess it was. I was at a conference somewhere, and we're having there's a prayer time prior to the conference. At least it used to be. I mean, these days it's tragic that there's not a lot of organized prayer before these things go on. That's another subject. But I was listening to somebody, and somebody said, and I came to him later, and I said, "What does that mean? What explain to me what that means? And did my Messiah die for a sound system?" Barry, there's a lot of cliches that we need to think through before we say them. I think would just be a good idea, but somehow that if you receive Jesus, or as we do receive Yeshua, everything's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be the bed of roses and tiptoeing through the tulips, as we continue through this life. That's not true. Devarim 25 is a picture of the people, the Bezrat Hashem, God willing, we are in our day. For those of you that were lagging behind, the exhausted ones, the struggling ones, those of you that were tired and weary, they're not a little tired, honest with themselves. But no matter how weary we are, in the book of Daniel that speak to this, of the enemy will try to exhaust the Zedekim, the saints. I get tired, I get weary, but no matter how that is, you got to stay in the pack. You got to stay in the game. You got to stay in the center of what's going on. Because if you allow yourself to straggle behind, you become the target. Anybody that's ever watched the Animal Channel, or one of those that the lion with the wildebeest, what do they look for? The one that's straggling behind, the one that separated themselves from the pack. That's the one that gets killed.
I'm reminded as you're talking about that, about the 1 Samuel 30, where David is in a very discouraged, defeated place. The Amalekites again have come and plundered his camp along with the wives and children of himself and his men. And it's a very defeated time. They're speaking of stoning David, maybe running out on their own. And it says that David encouraged himself in Yah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are times, I suppose, that folks wait by the phone anticipating that someone's going to recognize that I haven't been in touch for a while, or that I've kind of dropped off the radar, that I haven't been attending Shabbat services or church services. And maybe they'll get the clue that I'm out here feeling lonely and rejected and waiting for somebody just to pick up the phone or come by and let me know that they care.
Yeah.
Kind of been there on occasion myself, maybe. Anybody can get to feeling defeated and down and depressed.
Oh.
It happens. And sometimes life just wears you out over stuff, and sometimes more than several things in a row. But others are not always as perceptive as you might imagine them to be. Maybe they got a war going on their own front yard, and they're trying to figure out how to survive themselves.
Yeah.
So while you're sitting there upset that they haven't called you, maybe they're upset that you're not calling them. So there's been times where, I've had to just grab myself and say, okay, we're going to change attitudes today. This is not productive. This is not helpful. And I need your help. I need you to help me change my focus, my attitude, and my outlook here, because I'm spinning my wheels and I'm not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
So you have to, if nobody else is going to encourage you, you may have to encourage yourself and strengthen yourself and pull yourself up. Someone I know is watching this, but you just don't understand what I've been through. I'm going through. You don't understand how hard it is. Maybe not at the moment. But Mike, I dare say that in most circumstances, you and I have been in similar places before. It's been tough at points. There have been times that I just want to throw up my hands and say, "I'm done." Put a fork in me. I'm done. It's over.
Yeah. Been there, done that. Got a closet full of t-shirts.
So the one of the biggest things, the biggest lies that you can be told is nobody knows what I'm going through. Nobody understands how I feel. If anybody else is in this situation, they would have already quit. Now I'm hanging on, but I'm not far from quitting myself. If you look around, there's a lot of initials carved in that boat you're rowing. A lot of people have been there. The problem is we're just not as keen and perceptive as you might want us to be to recognize how bad you're going through a situation.
Yeah. Even Joshua, I was reading this. I just got finished reading Joshua this morning, actually, and I was really taken back by some verses center of the book. In chapter 13, Joshua was old. The years had taken their toll. Yudhe-Vavse said to him, You're old. The years have taken their toll, but there's yet a great deal of land to be possessed. And when I read that, it was like, yeah, okay. Joshua's is like sitting around one day going, I'm old and the years have taken my toll. And he hears this voice and says, you're right. But there's still a lot of land to be possessed. And so we read that in chapter 13. And in the next chapter, it says, the last verse, then the land had rest from war. So what would have happened if Joshua had not pulled himself up by the bootstraps, if you would, in chapter 13? He would have never seen the rest from the war. So the struggle at the time that you want to say, I'm done with it all, that's the time that you've got to say, no, I'm going to the next chapter. This is how I began this chapter, but this is how I will end the next chapter. And that's literally how it is there with the first verse of 13 and the last verse of 14. Can you find the energy? Can you find the energy to make it to the end of the next chapter?
So at the end of Yaakov's life, he has Joseph bring his two sons over, this phenomenal chapter in Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 48, where he crosses his hands, prophetically speaking about how that Ephraim is going to rise up and be greater than his brother, and in him is the fullness of the Goyim. You would have thought, okay, that's your climactic moment. You can lay down on your bed and just go to your father's job well done, enter in the applause meter and fade out to black. He's got a whole nother chapter left.
Yeah.
Where he strengthens himself, sits up on the edge of his bed, prophesies over each of his sons. And when he's done, he just pulls his feet up into the bed, lays back, and he's gone. He held on and strengthened himself until the job was completed.
Okay.
The issue is at times, Mike, we don't know when job is done. I may have shared this before. I was watching a pastor who was a very, very good artist do some work one time. And he was painting from a picture two little blonde-headed boys in a red and white striped shirt with denim bib overall, jeans on, blue eyes, blonde hair. The contrast of colors was vivid and sharp. And I looked at the picture and I looked at where he was at in the process, and I thought, that's a great portrait. How long did it take you to do that? He said, I'm not finished. And I couldn't imagine what he was doing beyond what was done. He said, today's job is to put moisture in their eyes. Do what? He said, their eyes are dry. If you look at it, they're dry. But I need to put some moisture in their eyes. And he looked at me, he said, the difference between a very good artist and a master is not huge amounts. It's the fine details, the little bitty things is the difference. Well, you never know, Mike. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying that you think you're finished. The crowning achievements, you may put a crown on someone's head, but are there any jewels in it yet?
Yeah.
You may need to take it up, put the jewels in. There are times that I thought, I've taught all I know to teach. I've preached all I know how to preach. I've sung all I know how to sing. I've written and recorded all that I got. And, I've used the analogy with Laura. I'm scraping the mud out of the bottom of the well looking for water here. So I can either sit in a dried up well and bemoan myself. I can pray for rain to send water into the well, or I can go dig another well. So it's up to me. What am I going to do? If I sit by a dried up well, I'm in a weak, vulnerable, attack worthy position. And I shouldn't be shocked when it happens. If I'm praying for rain, that's at least an act of faith and belief, and Yah can hear and answer that prayer. But will it be enough to fill the well back up? It's not enough to get a little water in your well. It needs to be full to the top. It needs to be running over. That means probably the best thing to do is to dig a new well. While you're waiting on rain to fill up the previous one, dig a new one and see which one gets filled up first.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I can tell you how to know when the job's done, Barry. This is very simple. When you're no longer breathing, the job's done. Okay. So if you wake up in the morning and you're breathing, which if you wake up, you're breathing, so your job's not done. And it's about that job being passed on and that, being pouring into other people. Let me take a different direction on this, Barry, for a moment. And that is, what about when we become the one that is making others weary? Or we become part of the, we become part of the weariness. Let me give you an example. Yesterday, the news and social media became enthralled with the masks are coming, the masks are coming. So what? I mean, I lived through them before. I lived through that time period before. So it's obvious if I lived through that time period before, I could probably live through it again. So why should I change my life? Why should I make rearrangements of my life of, well, they're going to lock down the country, whatever. That stuff, I can tell you who is weary. And this is the reason for where I wanted to go today. Let me tell you who's getting weary. It's the young people. I'm getting in my truck tomorrow and driving to Mannheim, Pennsylvania to do a semi-private youth conference of 20 to 30 youth. Because I know something about their lives today. They're weary. They're weary of all the conspiracies. They're weary of all the bad news. They're weary of all the stuff that's happening. And I'm driving 9.5 hours tomorrow with this one message. I know the plans I have for you, says Yud-Heh Vav-Heh. Plans for good and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Let me tell you, when you got a future and a hope and you're fixated, to use a word that Hanok and I have been using for the last couple of days, when you're fixated on the future and the hope, that is what gives you the energy to endure the day that it takes you to get there.
I have learned from Native culture that when elders speak, the younger generation does not interrupt and they listen. And it is an act of showing honor to those that have gone before them or going before them. Even if you disagree, you don't interrupt an elder. Scripture kind of bears that out when it says, do not rebuke an elder. Doesn't mean that the older you are, the more right you are. It does suggest that the older you are, the more experienced you might be. But it also says the more accountable for your leadership you might be. If the rising generation, or as I've begun to call them, the healed generation, they're not rising necessarily so in a slow fashion. They're right on our heels, and they're going to run us over if we don't hurry up and get moving. If they're listening to us and we're in panic mode and we are in anger mode and we're yelling and screaming about the next booster or the next mask mandate or isolations, or what confidence and encouragement does that inspire in them? If we face whoever they are, whatever they are doing, with joy, with expectancy, and carrying on as is normal, you're not going to stop me. I'm going to do what I do. No, we're not going to get all fear-mongered here. And no, we're not going to become conspiracy theorists over everything. We're going to lead. We're going to pray. We're going to discern his voice, and we're going to lead accordingly. If they hear that and they see we're not shaken, they will be willing to follow our leadership and be mentored into the same. If we're ranting, raving, and foaming at the mouth, I don't blame them if they throw up their hands and walk away and say, I'm not dealing with that.
You know, I received an email yesterday from someone that was off of Chabad website, and they get the word of the week, and I'm going to sign up for this. This kind of goes along with some, and if anybody would like the complete article, I'd be glad to send that. They can just send me an email. It says in here, and this is regarding the word for youth, which is nun ayin resh. Is the Hebrew word. And so this is the whole etymology about this word. And the writer said, let's see, I'd have to go to the whole thing. As we grow, I'm just going to give you a part of it. I'm going to send this to you, though. As we grow, we become accustomed to life's ways and complacency sets in. We start questioning our ability to change the world. Youth are free of this baggage. Their seeming naivety works to their advantage. Children can therefore bring about what adults see as improbable or impossible. This is just part of that article. And the article is talking about how it was confirming what I've been teaching with these young adults, these youth. When I tell them we need each other, you might not like it, but we need each other because I've lived longer. I have wisdom that you don't have. And you've heard me tell them, you can only have if you're hanging out with the people that are only your age, you can only have the wisdom of people your age, which should scare you. On the other hand, I draw energy from them. So if I'm only hanging out with people that are my age, I can only have the energy of people my age, which really scares me. But when we combine the two, and so as a person who is trying to develop mentorship into young adults, to youth, I have a choice. I can either be part of the ones who are making them weary, or I can tap into their energy and then direct that energy toward the right destination.
Let's take it to a little different angle again. It talks about, in this verse, all the feeble ones in your rear. And he attacked when we were tired and weary.
Yeah.
That seems to suggest then that those that were more energetic and stronger and healthy were out front. And they were perhaps, in my way of translating, maybe they were so gung-ho and looking forward to the next horizon that they were not paying attention to the fact that their pace was not able to be maintained by those behind them.
Yeah.
It kind of gives the idea, going back to, if you call yourself a leader and turn around and there's no one following, who are you kidding? You're not really leading. You're just on a walk by yourself. So
Yeah.
we have to be aware of the weak and the feeble among us. The scripture, I forget where the text is, it talks about lifting up the feeble hands that hang low. Recognizing those that are fallen. There, a righteous man will fall. What does it say? 7 times.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's got to help him up.
Yeah.
Rachel says, that when one of us is taken in a fault and a sin, those of us that are spiritual, we're accountable to restore such a one, being mindful about our own selves, lest we also be tempted. This is community. All of that's about community. Community is not just about the person in the epicenter or the person who is leading on the path. Community is about the whole group. I was told many years ago, when Laura and I just starting out in ministry, we took this skills test or awareness test, and out of the test, you would define yourself by the answering of certain questions. Are you a Simon Peter? Are you an Andrew? Are you a Philip? Or are you a John? Simon Peter is the guy that throws his legs over the side of the boat and hollers, "Charge, let's go." And he leads with enthusiasm and a fast pace. Andrew is the one that says, "Let me take you to Yeshua." And his leadership is about bringing people to the master. Philip is the one who says, "Let's think about this." And he calculates how much money it would take to buy enough bread to feed the multitudes. So he is the comprehensive, detailed, oriented leader. John, Yochanan, is the leader who says, "Let's just all get in here together and get close to the chest of Yeshua. Let's just gather around and be together." I was shocked. I thought I would be an Andrew, but I turned out to be Simon Peter off the chart. And when my pastor saw that, he just laughed, and I was puzzled. He knew me better than I knew myself. But then they told me something, Mike, that bugged me, because the one I didn't want to be was Yochanan. I just thought that's not much going on there. They said the Shimon Peters, the Simon Peters, eventually, as they get older and mature, they become Yochanan. And now my goal has, in my later years here, has been less of charge, follow me, I know the way. It has been more about, I need to keep my group together. I need to build my community. So what? I can run 100 miles an hour in front of everybody and say, "I see the horizon. It's great. Y'all come on." It's more about, I need my flock to be together and stop being scattered out all over the hills. So we need to be aware of those that are weak and feeble and put a guard around them. They may be able to keep up the pace if somebody will walk with them, help transport them, encourage them, lay hands on them and heal them. So, I mean, the next time you want to complain about somebody they're just always sick. Why can't they ever walk in health? Well, help them. Yeah. Show them maybe that they're eating wrong, or that they are making bad health choices, or they may need lay hands on them, do something. But you complain about somebody, or you can help them. One of the two.
Leadership. What you're describing is leadership. So you mentioned the flock. A shepherd in the field without sheep is a man sitting in a field. He can call himself a shepherd all day, but until there's sheep in the field, he's just a man sitting there. Part of shepherding is knowing how to set the right pace. And this is what you mentioned, the 4 different disciples. We could look at all 12 of them. They all have different personalities. We look at the 12 tribes. They all have different personalities. And Messiah sets the right pace. And for those that are feeble, that are straggling behind, you're right. You put somebody there with them. Kathy and I did a 38.6 mile hike in Alaska many years ago. And on one of the times that we did this, I did this twice, but she was with me on one. And we had a girl with us, and she was not, she thought she knew something about hiking. In the first day, we figured out, and this is a bad idea. And so her pack was too heavy. Well, I ended up carrying most of her pack. So we may have to carry one another's burdens so that those that are feeble for whatever reason, maybe they've been injured along the way. A person that has sprained their ankle or has a blister on their foot is not able to keep up. So they may have to have help in doing so. So we need to be looking for people. And this is to me, the point of the story here is watching out for people who are lagging behind. Now, on the other side of that, if you're known to be the one that lags behind all the time, and maybe it's, well, I'm lagging behind because I know that if I do, somebody will come back and help me. Well, maybe it's time to grow up. Maybe it's time to make some changes. Maybe it's time to not be the person that's holding everybody back all the time. Maybe it's time to lose the identity of, well, I'm just the weak one, bless my heart. and make some changes that say, I'm tired of being in the back. I'm going to change so that I don't hold the rest of the group back from their destiny.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be the one that shows up late all the time. I want to be the one that's there encouraging everybody. And sometimes all that is a mental decision, Barry.
I appreciate very, very much those that show up at the end of an event. And, like in a recent event, I had music equipment and PA equipment with me and things to pack up. And while I was initiating the putting away of my guitar, that's job one, make sure nothing gets, falls on it and that kind of thing. I had several guys come up and say, how can I help you? Can I carry something for you? And I was able to delegate several little jobs of carrying this, that, and the other. And they said, where do you want it? And I was, just able to tell them, take it to this location. And that would be a great help. And thank you. And they would take one load and come back and ask, is there anything else I can carry for you? I'm particular about the way I want to wrap my mic cables and those kinds of things. So I don't want to see someone do it the wrong way. That kind of, I'm a little OCD. I bought those cables and I want them wrapped the right way type thing. But hey, you want to carry a speaker cabinet? You want to haul some mic stands? Let me get the mics off and the cables off. And yeah, you can collapse that and take that for me. That kind of help is the mindset that looks at someone that says, I see you're struggling.
Yeah.
It's not about physically necessarily maintaining a pace. It's about spiritually maintaining a pace. We don't understand the traumas that somebody may have been through, We don't understand how easily some folks are triggered. We don't understand where their weaknesses are necessarily because they hide them. People tend to hide their weak spots and chinks in their armor because they don't want them to be exploited. When you've been abused, when you've been trounced on, when you've been assaulted verbally, when you've been wrongly accused of things in congregations, and you go find a different place to be, you go in hiding, you duct tape your armor together the best you can, and you pray that you're not a victim again.
Yeah.
And when somebody honestly, sincerely, genuinely is willing to love you and pray with you and get you through things, it's not like you just immediately open up and say, well, finally, I found somebody that genuinely cares. You're still suspicious. You're still guarded. You're still timid about things. And we can't become frustrated when people are resistant to our help initially. What are they looking for? Trustworthy leadership that is genuinely maintained, consistent. And it takes time. What does that mean?
Oh, yeah.
That means you can't just grab people, throw them over your shoulder and say, bless God, you're coming with me one way or the other. I'll drag you if I have to. That's not trustworthy leadership. A wounded sheep may initially resist the hand of the shepherd that's there to try to heal it and help it. If it's hurt and bleeding, I'm not a shepherd in that regard, so I don't really understand that nature of them. But I know other animals. If you have a pet dog, that may be your dog is sat in your lap, but if they've been hit by a car or wounded by something other, and you try to help them, they might bite you out of fear. So shepherds get bit; it hurts.
Oh, yeah.
But people are only responding out of their past.
It's true. It's true. Well, we're out of time. I want to go back to one thing, and I'll finish with this. That you said, you talked about the guys that came around you and began to help. If a leader doesn't have people helping them, then they have to focus so much on the tasks that they're not able to focus on the people. I'm blessed at Life Assembly. I've got a couple of men that I don't have to do anything. I mean, literally, I can stand there and everything's done. Everything that needs to go in my car is put in my car totally, completely. And that allows me to like at the end of the service, I can then look around and see, is there anyone that I need to speak to? Is there someone that's standing there that needs some extra attention because these men have helped with the tasks so that I can focus more on the people.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the key here is not everybody's called to be a leader, but maybe you're called to be the one that takes care of the leader's tasks so they can focus on the people.
My last thought is the beginning of the previous verse. Remember what Amalek did to you.
Yep.
Don't, recognize who the real enemy is.
Yep.
It's not your people. It's not your leaders. There's an outside adversary that's looking to take advantage of our weakness.
Got that.
So we have to remember that. Thank y'all for watching today. Thank you for persevering. We've had a little internet difficulties here and there. Mike's been dealing with a few things, but hey, we got through it, and we trust it's been a blessing to you. Share on your social media. Invite your friends to watch, and we'll see you again next week. Shalom, Mike.
See ya.